now you've read through the methods, I'm going to give you a quick demonstration of what this experiment would actually look like. I'm not going to go all the way through to the end because I'm using the copper sulphate in my daughter's chemistry set, and she might not be very impressed if I use all of it up, but we'll certainly get the general idea of what's going to happen. So in your method you were told that you need 100 centimetres cubed of distilled water, so we've got our water there. We're going to need to measure the temperature of it, so I will put the thermometer in there just while we have a look at the rest of the apparatus and record that in a minute. It'll need a little bit of time just so that it takes on the true temperature of the water. It says the copper sulphate powder and beaker were going to be weighed. So I'm going to use my kitchen scales here. In the lab, if you notice on my kitchen scales, we're just recording in whole grams here. Obviously in the lab we can record to 2 or even 4 decimal places. So again, not so accurate, but it will do for the purposes of showing you the idea. And then we've got some results that were recorded more accurately beforehand. So we need to know how much copper sulphate, so it's a blue powder in there, we've got. So we're going to weigh the beaker, the container it's in, and the copper sulphate there. So that is weighing 11 grams. So on the results table, for room temperature, I'm going to record the mass of the copper sulphate in the beaker at the start. So that was 11 grams. While I'm here, I'll go back up and check the thermometer. So the thermometer is reading 22 degrees. So our room temperature today is going to be 22 degrees C there. Now, what we next need to do is take some of that copper sulphate and dissolve it in the water. So let me just sort my tripod out here so that you can see what's going on. Okay, so I'm going to take a bit of the copper sulphate. So I'm going to have to use a backward spoon to shovel some up here. So can we see that that's nice crystalline blue solid there? So we're going to tip that into the water. And then I'm going to use the thermometer here to give it a bit of a stir. Normally we'd use a stirring rod, but I haven't got one of those either. I need to borrow a few more bits and pieces. So can we see that that is starting to dissolve up? If you look carefully, you might be able to tell, let me see if I can hold it there so you can see, that there's still a bit of solid left at the bottom of there. Okay, so that's okay for now. So we're going to dissolve, dissolve, dissolve. Now remember, we're wanting to find out what the maximum amount of solid we can dissolve at room temperature is. So if I've given that a good stir and then I can't see any more solid particles left in there, which I can't, I'm going to add a bit more copper sulphate. So I'll put another shovel in there. And then I'm going to give that another good stir. And I will carry on doing this, so adding a small amount and then giving it a good stir, and then another small amount and giving it another stir until I can't get it any more to dissolve. So how do you think I'm going to know when I can't get any more dissolved? What might I see if the stuff isn't dissolving? So have a quick think there. So hopefully you've got the idea that we might be able to see on the underside of the beaker some of the solid particles that haven't dissolved. So as soon as you get even one particle that won't dissolve, one crystal that won't dissolve, then you have got the maximum amount dissolved into your solution. Now, once you get to that part, as I was saying, I'm not quite there yet, but I don't want to waste all our copper sulphate. So we'll sort of pretend we're there at the moment. Once we get to that part, what we really want to know is how much we've actually dissolved in here. So we know how much the container and the copper sulphate weighed in the first place. So what we want to know is how much we've taken out of here. So if we then go and weigh it at the end, okay, so say this was the end, and can you now see on my balance that that is 10 grams. So if I go pop that into my results table here, if at the beginning our mass of copper sulphate in the beaker was 11 grams, and after adding the copper sulphate to the water, the mass of copper sulphate in beaker was 10 grams, then the difference between the two is going to tell us how much has dissolved in our water there. Now, If we were carrying this out in the lab, we would then go and repeat the experiment at a higher temperature, and we said go for around 40 degrees. So on your next slide, you have got a results table that has some results that were generated in the lab for room temperature, and again generated in the lab for around 40 degrees as well. And you are going to use those results to draw some conclusions and to see what you have learned and what you now understand about how solubility changes with different temperatures.